I am Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Soucy.
And we're paranormal specialists who live in the most haunted city on earth, Savannah, Georgia. Every day is Halloween in our line of work, so join us as we spin true tales of haunts, murders, and disturbing Savannah history. I'm Madison.
I'm Chris.
And welcome to the most haunted city on earth. If you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to like, comment, or subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. And if you're listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, make sure to go ahead and give us a 5-star rating so that we can continue bringing you great content. Stay spooky, y'all. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of The Most Haunted City on Earth. My name is Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Soucy.
And today we are doing something a little bit fun. We are actually live streaming this episode filming for the Parajunkies. So they are going to get to see this episode happen right in real time. So very exciting. We're going to be doing a Q&A today. So if you would like to have our questions or your questions asked and answered on the podcast, definitely utilize that TikTok little button. It says Q&A at the top of our profile, and that is the best way for me to see your questions. It's all going to be in one place for me so that I will not miss them.
Yep, absolutely.
It's a little bit tricky with all the comments and things like that, so definitely utilize that button. But today we've got quite a few really interesting questions, and JT is going to be reading them to us, so don't worry about that. But anywho.
All right, is everybody ready for our first question?
Absolutely.
Okay, very cool. So here we go. Chelsea Borisov asks, what I don't understand about locking mirrors is the fact you have to clean them. How does that not unlock your mirror? Is it a time thing? Thank you.
Interesting question. Okay, so I think we've gotten this question a few times in the comments. Now, you see, when it comes to locking mirrors, it's not necessarily about the things that you're utilizing or the mark that it leaves. It's about the intention you're putting behind it. So everything when you're dealing with witchcraft in general is all about your intentions. So when you're saying, like, I'm locking this mirror, you're basically telling the mirror, like, you're not allowed to let entities through this. So when you wipe them, like you wipe the oil away or you wipe the holy water, moon water, whatever you're using away, it doesn't mean the lock goes away. It just means the tool that you're utilizing is just going away, but that's fine. I do recommend refreshing your locks. I usually refresh them about once a month or so, just to, make sure everything is upholding. But you want to do that with any of your wards. And that's a whole different episode we can get into is, witchcraft and warding and things like that. But
absolutely. And things to remember, intent is the answer, but action oftentimes, and ritual, the reason why we do ritual is to enforce the intent. The reason why we go through an action is to kind of double down on how intent we are on whatever it is that we're trying to achieve. That becomes very much a part of manifestation. You hear people talking about this. This is a huge thing right now. A lot of things about being positive and having positive notions. So interestingly enough, your doubt of the longevity of anything you do can play into it. So yeah, when you are wiping it away and you're thinking, I'm wiping away the lock, that is reversing it. You have to constantly uphold the faith in the ritual and the faith in the action so that when you do things, you're not allowing the doubt that it doesn't work to play upon the intent. So the more potent your intent, the more potent your lock. The more potent your belief in what you're doing, the more real the effect will be. So don't doubt what you've done. It's all about doing action that enforces the belief.
Absolutely. And that's a good way to put it. It really is. Everything in witchcraft is truly about how much honestly honoring your inner power and trusting yourself, how much you believe that you are able to do those things. But we can definitely do like a whole episode on witchcraft and, the history of these things and where they come from.
It's just like anybody who has that lucky thing, that lucky item.
Right.
They put a lot of faith in the lucky item. They'll have, that lighter that their father gave them or that coin that they found one day. They've put the intent into the item, and the item now is imbued with that power for as long as they have faith that it protects them. It does. So, it's amazing how much power a human being has. But more amazing than that is how much power we give away through doubt and through inconsistency.
Absolutely. I mean, interestingly enough, we associate certain properties with different crystals and herbs and things like that. But genuinely, you can make anything a ward if you really wanted it to be. I once saw a TikTok witch. Their name is Frankie, and Chaotic Witch Aunt. So if you like witchcraft stuff, go follow them. But they did like a little TikTok where they're like, I could literally go outside and just pick up any rock that I see, and if I tell it like you're going to protect my house, it works basically. Absolutely. And that's the best way to illustrate it.
And that's also where like priests and priestesses and practitioners really get a lot of their energy is from people who seek them out. You go to a person that you trust to have the ability to empower these things, then your faith in them becomes your faith in whatever they've done for you or what's going on. It is so instrumental in this kind of practice that you understand that ritual reinforces those things, and your belief is really at the center of the effectiveness of any of it.
Absolutely. But yes, please bring all the witchy comments and questions. I love it. So,
all right, moving on to the next one. Patrick Young asks, how do we go on ghost tours with you?
That's a great question,
That's
actually.
That's a good question.
So I do ghost tours weekly. And that is through the Savannah Underground, which, if you didn't know, we have an immersive horror theater. And we are partnered with a tour company called Kelly Tours. So I give the ghost tours on there every Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, all the above. So, yeah, if you want to take a ghost tour, that's the best way to do it. But I also am open to doing private ghost tours.
If you wanted to arrange it, it would just be about opening a conversation, probably through our, maybe through Ghostmail.
Yeah, send it through Ghostmail, definitely.
And then we can maybe set up a private tour. We're not opposed to it. Yeah. But we don't have anything set up at the moment.
Absolutely. I've done a couple of private tours with a few listeners before, and they're really fun. I kind of custom make the tour to your particular interests. So, yeah, if you have things that you specifically want to see, include that also in your email, so that way we can kind of gauge.
Right. We would if we were to do it, it would definitely be custom.
Absolutely. Yeah. So come take a ghost tour. It's fun. It's a good time.
It is. They're awesome at it. Alrighty, here we go. Abby Wilsey asks, "Hi from Alaska. Can dogs slash animals have any sort of entity or spirit attachments, or can they be entities or spirits? Asking for a friend."
Absolutely.
Do you have a skinwalker or something? Is this? Are you okay, Abby?
Well, it's interesting because if you think about the many stories that are about like pets who have lost an owner, and how their behavior seems to mimic the schedule that they always had, or the classic tale of the dog that goes down to the train station waiting for their owner who passed away. There is a good amount of information to suggest that the spiritual connection between a human and their pet is very intense, and Lord knows there are lots of stories of people who lost pets and still see them or hear them or have sensations of them. I've talked about it on this podcast before that my dog who passed, I occasionally still see, and that could just be my heart being missing my dog, but I do believe that the spirit realm is open to any entity that can that can impact the environment. So yeah, absolutely, I believe that you can run into ghost pets, and animals can absolutely have attachments. Think of how attached you are to your pet, and if you passed away and your pet was still alive, you'd probably want to visit your pet.
Absolutely. I mean, so interestingly, I've heard a couple stories of people saying that their pet has encountered spirits in different ways. One actually is from Radar, who's one of the para-junkies, but also our driver for the Savannah Underground. And she told me about how one of her friends had a dog. Well, she had 2 dogs. One of the dogs passed away. So the dog that was still living would only play with her sister dog in a very particular way. She was the only dog that she'd play like this. And after the other dog had passed away, she got very depressed, very lonely, which happens a lot when you have pets that are bonded to each other in that way. But apparently one day, Karma, the dog that was still alive, started playing like how she did with the dog that had passed. And they're like, what is that? Like, she's like playing with nothing, but they thought that maybe the dog had come back to visit her and was playing with her as a spirit, which I think is a very sweet and heartwarming story. But it does show like maybe, pets that are bonded, because you see a lot of animals, especially rescues, that are bonded, and it makes you wonder if they come and visit each other if one passes.
Well, I remember, so my parents had a Cocker Spaniel named Libby. And one night, out of the blue, Libby just started howling. And this was not a noise that Libby made normally, but all night long. Could not console her, could not do anything to keep Libby from having this horrible reaction all night long. My parents ended up taking her to the vet the next morning. Well, it turned out the vet was where they got Libby. So they take Libby to the vet, and the vet was like, oh, Libby, this is so weird because Libby's father died last night. Libby's dad had died that night, and Libby spent the entire night crying.
Oh, poor Libby. Oh my gosh, that's so sad. It's interesting how sensitive pets are to different things. On the flip of that question, I don't necessarily think that they're super susceptible to like dark entities attaching to them, but they're very prone to paranormal experiences. My grandmother, who passed away, she's a firecracker, and she likes to be acknowledged on her birthday, and especially by my dad, who that was his mom. And so I want to say like probably 6 or 7 years ago, he forgot to post about her birthday and all that, because it's in August, and sometimes life gets to you. But
sure.
Basically, for a week, our family dog, Shiloh, was just losing it all the time. This is the calmest, laziest dog of all time. He does literally nothing all day long, but he was just like constantly like barking, shouting, crying, acting like something was at the top of the stairs, like just seemed like something was tormenting him. And then my dad realized he hadn't posted about his mom. He's like, I wonder if it's my mom, bothering the dog, because Shiloh's bark is just horrific. So that's going to really annoy anybody who's around him. And after he had like acknowledged her birthday, all of it stopped.
Oh, there you go.
They will, if they're trying to sometimes get in contact with you, they go through your pet in ways to annoy you or get your attention. Sure. So
pets are far likely to see than humans.
Right. So.
All right. Great question. Crystal Smith asks, when I experience deja vu, it is followed by a feeling of anxiety, like something bad is about to happen. What is deja vu, and why does it feel like that?
So I think medically, deja vu is just a stimulation of the area of your brain that is responsible for holding memories, and thereby that stimulation creates any new information as a memory. That's how they explain deja vu scientifically. However, there are plenty of paranormal connections to the sensation of deja vu. And it could be a type of precognitive sensation where you've actually noted this moment before. Maybe you've had a dream. Maybe you've had some notion of this time before. There are people who believe in time slips, which is where you basically get into a location that creates a weird loop pattern in your existence, and then that becomes a way to see the present as something that has happened before because you've actually time looped through it. So there are lots of really bizarre notions about deja vu, but the fact that that it's accompanied by anxiety, that's not abnormal, because I think that the sensation of, oh my God, this has happened before, is so strange, because in most cases of deja vu, you actually don't know what's happening next. You only have the sensation that it's happened before. And that can create a lot of anxiety, because you're like, I should know what comes next. I should know what's about to happen, because in my mind, I'm so certain that I've done this before.
And there's also instances, I know I personally used to have this a lot when I was a kid, is I'd have really intense deja vu, but it was always for situations where something horrible happened. Like, I would remember it from dreams or things like that, where I'd be like, this happens, and then there's like a massive fire or something, you know? And so I felt anxiety because I was worried, like, oh, are we about to encounter a massive fire or whatever it was? So I wonder if that's kind of the same way with you, because, you know, brains are weird, and
so weird.
They're very complex. And so, you know, you might be getting that deja vu sensation and only part of it is correct, or, you know, something changed and it didn't end up ending the way that you remembered it ending. So
right, we tend to fill in the blanks. I mean,
right.
That's one of the hardest things about ghost hunting, is our brains will constantly fill in blanks. And so, like, even sitting in the dark and looking around, and you see something, or you can't completely figure out what it is, your brain's like, I got it.
Right.
I'm going to make a face out of that. It's like, please don't.
Don't do that.
I'm not ready for that. I'm like, no, it's a face. Trust me. So, yeah, your brain will sometimes be actively trying to fill in the answer of what comes next, or already had. Like, you were given some brief glimpse of the future, and then it was like, oh, well, what happened next was explosion.
Right.
And so then you're sitting there waiting for that explosion.
Yeah. And, you know, the thing is with people who have that type of ability to see moments in the future, there still is choice in existence. There's still free will. Things can change. That's why I never trust personally when people say this is going to happen to you for certain, or, you know, you're for sure going to have this happen, because we go through life and have choices, and that lead to different paths. So anytime, you know, you think that there's something inevitably going to happen, it could change it at the flip of a hat. So what you could have saw could have been one of the outcomes, you know.
Oh, absolutely.
But it doesn't mean that it has to end up that way, if that makes any sense. But, you know, I always like to include that, like, you know, it's nothing is for certain. That's just something, you know, to at least ease your anxiety.
Right, absolutely. Everything is colliding all at the same time. So every single moment of your life is a billion possibilities, all going in different directions. So even the most gifted of prophets, what they're probably doing is seeing the most likely outcome. Because even our existence, even us just being here, is only the most likely thing. We're most likely to be sitting here talking to you right now, but it's a good possibility we're not. There's actually more evidence that we aren't sitting here talking to you right now than there is that we are. Because, well, that's physics. That's how it works. Because the overwhelming amount of possibilities versus one. And that becomes the big question. How do we know what exists and what doesn't exist? And how can we nudge things into the proper existence, which pulls back to that idea of altering the reality we live in through magic, through ritual, through all these things, because all possibilities exist simultaneously. We just have to be aware of the possibility that we're in at the moment. And right now we are under, a vast perception. Everybody's agreed that this is happening. We've all agreed on this one event. Could we change that? Could we have a better perception or a stronger perception than everyone else? It's possible, but it takes work.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa, that was psychedelic. Goodness gracious. I was like, all right.
Yes.
It's like making me think so, like, a
nice
deeply.
Sunday morning crisis.
Hey, it's daylight savings. I'm still asleep. So.
All right. Here we go. Eleanor Austin 796 asks, not quite sure how to phrase this. Was or can a poltergeist have ever been a living person? Are they considered ghosts?
Your brain needs support, and new Ollie Brainy Chews are a delightful way to take care of your cognitive health. Made with scientifically backed ingredients like Thai ginger, L-theanine, and caffeine, Brainy Chews support healthy brain function and help you find your focus, stay chill, or get energized. Be kind to your mind and get these nootropic chews at ollie.com. That's OLLY.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Wow. That's a good question. Well, and unfortunately, I think poltergeists have become this notion of not being a human, being a kind of spiritual entity force that is just basically rattling things, moving things, almost like a tidal wave in a location of spiritual energy that is just calamity and causing calamity, which then brings up the next question: could it be an entity? Absolutely could be an entity being misdiagnosed as a poltergeist, only because we use the word poltergeist to mean not human. I think the actual definition of poltergeist is noisy ghost, noisy spirit. And somewhere along the way, somebody just decided that, the classic poltergeist is in fact just a spiritual energy that causes things to fall over, to clatter, to ring. It creates noise. It's a noisy thing. The thing that goes bump in the night. That's a poltergeist in those ideas. So it's not really a question of whether or not a poltergeist could be a person. It's a question of whether or not we are misdiagnosing the sounds and the things as a poltergeist, because we use the word poltergeist to mean non-human. So yeah, absolutely. A something that's causing noises and causing disruptions and causing these things in the middle of the night could be an entity that was once human, trying desperately to be seen, heard, recognized.
I also like to lump in with poltergeist the humans that are either losing empathy or any kind of humanity into the more demonic realm, but because they were human, it gets tricky to classify them as anything like that.
In that weird realm of residual energy, something that had left enough of a mark for it to still imprint and affect the environment. Because a lot of times residual haunts we don't really consider to be intelligent. Like, we don't think of them as a spirit that is actively doing something as much as it is a condition, like a recording that is being played over and over and over again. However, we have discussed this before, that even in residual cases, the fact that the recording is happening, the fact that the energy is there, by observation and by continual investigation, you could drum up enough of that spiritual energy to kind of extract a little intelligence out of that residual haunting. And the same with the lack of empathy. I tend to think of ghosts in a way where they're basically losing their influence and their ability to represent themselves, and they become kind of empty shells of energy that still maintain and go about. And then we talk about intent again. Because when a ghost has only a specific intent, a singular intent, then they stop caring about whether or not they're harming people. They start caring about whether or not what they do will be deemed as evil. They are just so intent on having whatever it is that they wanted, that they lose sight of human interaction and they become dangerous and thereby demonic by definition, dangerous to humans, corrupting entities.
Like JT and I's favorite ghost story, Bloody Mackenzie.
Bloody Mackenzie.
He's a really great example of that. He is technically, by a lot of paranormal investigators, classified as a poltergeist, but he's the perfect example of somebody who was human, who already had very little empathy for humanity, like if any at all. And now in the afterlife, he is only got more intense. But that's partially because of when they buried him in a mausoleum where he killed thousands of people and had them buried in their makeshift concentration camp. So that's for one. Also, he has got like a major power source behind his mausoleum.
Sure.
But his intentions are very malevolent. And so, that's why we see activity with him of the tour guides having fires start up in their homes or in their offices, and then people getting scratched and bruised and pushed and maimed in front of his mausoleum. He's a good example of that. And if you have not listened to the Bloody Mackenzie from One to Wicked, you should definitely listen to that, because it's a wild bananas story. But
It is.
It is.
All right, we have a live question.
Ooh, live question.
From the Parajunkie live chat. All right. Alexandra Machado asks, any criticism on the current shows about seeing the dead / ghosts, like Ghosts or Not Dead Yet, or even the movie We Have a Ghost?
Oh, God, the We Have a Ghost is... I couldn't make it through that movie. It's so cornball.
Yeah, I have zero qualms with anybody who wants to make a creative story out of our fascination with ghosts. And you should not watch any of these shows with, well, that's not accurate.
Right.
Because that's the truth of shows. That's the truth. So the question is, do you enjoy them? So, if we wanted to take a critical look and say, well, that movie's dialogue was, weak and the story was not that great, that's a totally different issue. But if you're asking what our paranormal take on it is, from my point of view, have at it. Tell whatever ghost story you want in any way you want. I remember the first season of American Horror Story.
Oh, love that.
Such an enjoyable thing, but from a ghost hunting point of view, it drove me nuts.
It's so inaccurate.
I was like, what? Who did that? How? And why? And why is that person there? And why do they look like that when there should be what? How do they grow? What is happening? So I don't like any show or story where they tell us the rules and then break them without any regard. And that was one. They told us a bunch of rules about ghosts that made it very specific and very telling. And then there would be whole storylines that abandoned the rules. So that's my general take is, if you're going to tell a ghost story, make it, and you tell me rules, stick to the rules, because the rules are kind of important for storytelling, because that's how we understand the story. If you break the rules and don't ever address the fact that you broke the rules, that can cause some issue. That it makes it hard to watch. However, that didn't detract from how good the show was. It just was, in a ghosty storytelling way. It's like, oh wait, I don't understand why. Apparently, if you die in a place, then you're stuck there, unless for some reason you have the ability to go anywhere.
Right.
And your perception is. I could go on.
Right. Right.
But as far as the modern shows that are out, I think it's about your taste in the material, not necessarily how solidly they follow the rules of ghosts.
I completely agree. I mean, the thing is I would wager that 98% of people who make these ghost hunting shows have no concept of what it's actually like on a daily experience to encounter spirits, which is fine. And I am totally okay with that. I have made my peace with just accepting that I have a very different experience than a lot of people. But the Point being is with any of these TV shows or movies, it is all about entertainment value, and they don't care if, it's actually accurate to...
Right, because the premise of Ghosts, the TV show, which was originally a BBC show, is, the sitcom format. It is a bunch of disparate characters who are all forced to live together and the interactions thereby. And there's a lot of great humor to be derived from that. But if you're watching it with a critical ghost eye, you might have a lot of problems with how the storytelling works. No, if you enjoy it. Yeah. And if you don't watch it.
And just take it with a grain of salt, There are plenty of educational ghost, intelligence speeches and shows and things like that if you're looking for that type of information. But usually things you're finding on Netflix, Hulu, all that, they don't really care.
And I would also like to point out, and this is something that's true, fear and humor are very closely linked, because they are about something that you don't know is going to happening. Humor is about giving you the absurd or the strange, the thing that you didn't see coming. That's what a punchline is. It's like, oh, that's funny because you set this up and then you told me this. Same with horror. Horror is you're living your life and then something horrible happens. Unexpected. The unexpected is the key. Almost everything that scares us will ultimately become comedic. That is how it works. If you watch the old, like Dracula and Frankenstein, those movies in the 30s terrified people. They were terrified of them. But it wasn't that long before it was the Three Stooges meet Frankenstein. Yeah. Before it was
like Shaun of the Dead too.
Shaun of the Dead.
Shaun of the Dead is was
a great entry into that idea. Yeah. So the fact that we're seeing ghosts and We Have a Ghost and these shows that are now more humorous is telling us that we are coming to grips with that fearfulness that we used to carry with us so much about ghosts. We are now kind of coming around to the idea of acceptance, because anything that we're afraid of, once we've accepted it, becomes funny. Yeah. And that, Freddy Krueger is a great example.
Oh, yeah.
Freddy Krueger was super scary in the first Nightmare on Elm Street, but he became more and more of a comedic entity.
Yeah, he did, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
He did.
Over the series. And that is because one of the strongest ways to combat fear is by laughing at it.
It's true. Yeah. With We Have a Ghost, I will tell you, I think it's an interesting concept of making a ghost seem like they're on the payroll, basically. Because I loved... So, like I said, I did not make it through the movie because it's just a little too... It was just a little too... messy for my particular taste.
Yeah, but the Haunted Mansion is like one of your favorite movies.
Listen, I am an unashamed Disney adult. Leave me alone.
Well, they're coming out with a new one.
Yes, they are.
Is it a series or is it just
I have no idea,
a Disney Plus
They'll
movie?
ruin it.
Yeah, they will. They will.
They're like the new Exorcist. They're coming out with the new Exorcist. I'm like, they're gonna ruin that.
I don't think they're gonna ruin Haunted Mansion, to be honest.
I really hope they don't.
And the only reason I say that is because it's one of those interesting things where course correction seems to be a lot of the construct with Disney and that enterprise. And I want to say, although the Muppets Haunted Mansion was not good.
Yeah, I'm telling you, with The Exorcist, it's like you can't remake a perfect movie. Like if someone tries to remake, I don't care if someone gave me $40 million, $50 million and said, go remake Jaws, I'd be like, absolutely not. I'll make Jaws. I'll make Jaws 7 or whatever we're at, and I'll make it as good as I can make it, but I'm not going to try to remake something that's already perfect. Same thing with Exorcist, same thing with Tremors, It's true. Yeah. It's true. You don't want to remake Tremors. You want to build upon Tremors, and that's exactly what they've been doing. They've been doing a horrible job. But anyway,
that's
a bad example, actually. But yeah, with We Have a Ghost, I actually thought that yes, we didn't finish it, but I thought that it was pretty decent, just solely off of how they were portraying the ghost, because it's very Haunted Mansion. That's what a lot of people liked about Haunted Mansion, is how, fun and cartoony. It definitely played out like a kid's movie.
Well, and
it is a kid's movie.
Correct me, I have not seen We Have a Ghost yet, but correct me if I'm wrong, he can't speak. He doesn't.
Yes.
He can't speak.
He can only
moan.
And
I want to say that alone kind of gives it a step away from the highly communicative ghosts that we've been seeing in so many things, where they show up and they're able to just tell you what's going on. Because in so many instances, like in a good ghost story, if you see a ghost, it's not like, well, hello, my name is Roderick and I was killed 24 years ago in this very spot, and it's a mystery. You don't know who it is, you don't know why they're there, you don't understand, and trying to understand why they're there usually is how you get them to rest. Right. You help them find their rest by discovering why they're haunting a place. Because in most cases, ghosts are, I saw something in the corner of my eye. I saw a man there. I saw this. There's very rarely the true boogity where somebody just comes out and is like, boogity, and you're like, oh, well, I see clearly that he's wearing a bowling shirt. Perhaps he was a bowler. And so...
And you haven't seen the movie?
I haven't seen the movie.
Okay.
Yeah. But I will, to defend the Haunted Mansion. Okay, let me tell y'all. From a standpoint of Disney, Disney, if you go into like the way back days, like to the Black Cauldron, Disney likes to get dark at times.
That's true.
But they entered an era where they did not get dark for a long time. And so for us spooky children, like myself, I lived for the Haunted Mansion ride. I lived really close to Disney, in a day trip kind of way. And so I went to Disney often, and I loved how spooky it was. And so when they made a movie with Eddie Murphy, who's just amazing in whatever he does, and so, it brought to life a perfect blend of children who like spooky things, but also are a little afraid of things. It was perfect. But if you do like the Haunted Mansion, there is a podcast. It's 20 minutes. It is literally just like 1 or 2 episodes or something long, but they base it off of the actual storyline with the ride. The ride is a totally different storyline than the movie.
Right, and I think that was the one criticism from the movie, was that they did not follow that story, because there is a very specific storyline, and it does include like an immense amount of storytelling.
Yes.
Because there's a lot going on. So, it definitely was one of those things where, and it was a precursor to Pirates, right? Mm-hmm. It came out before Pirates of the Caribbean.
It did. Yep.
Yeah.
So that puts it in this interesting place, because without it, I don't think Pirates of the Caribbean would have existed, because they were basically taking a ride and turning it into a feature film. And Pirates of the Caribbean, there's a story to Pirates of the Caribbean.
There is.
The ride that you don't really see. You see moments from the ride, but there is, it's such a bizarre and truly, so it was about being super creative with the elements of the ride while not really paying attention. However, Haunted Mansion does have a pretty solid story.
Oh, yeah. And you can go into rabbit holes of this. Now, there is a whole podcast that just does deep dives into all of those rabbit holes of the plot, but this one is specifically a story told, and they got the guy who narrates the ride to do it.
Nice.
God, how many podcasts about the haunted?
There's one. There is one.
Oh, okay.
It's only one podcast. But no, this is just like, I say it's a podcast because it's literally just like a narrated story.
LOL.
And it's like 2 episodes, but they got the guy from the ride. So
Gotcha.
if you like that, go find it. It's so good.
All right, we got to move on. But I will say, just before we do, we have a ghost or something, whatever the movie title is. The one thing that they got spot on was going viral for ghosty stuff.
Oh yeah.
That's exactly, like, watch that, and that's exactly how Madison and I are when we post like a TikTok, and it's like, 20,000 views in like a minute, and we're like, no way! We're like freaking out. Usually it's Chris talking about demons. All right, here we go. All right, Alex M asks. There we go. Alex M asks, on the topic of doppelgangers.
Oh boy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Is it possible to date a doppelganger of an ex-boyfriend? I think I'm dating my ex's doppel, and things are opposite, just on the topic of doppelgangers.
Interesting.
That is very interesting. I would like to hear more details of what brought you to this conclusion.
Well, and that plays into an interesting thing because every culture seems to have a version of doppelgangers, and the difference between like having a spiritual doppelganger and having a physical doppelganger, because there is a belief that somewhere in the world there is a person who just looks exactly like you just by the concept of random choice, just by the idea that there's only so many facial configurations in the universe. And now that we're up to, 8 billion people on the planet, your face is probably repeat. Even if you're, 1 in a million, that means there's, a million of you out there. So worth noting, there is a good chance that the belief that there are people who just naturally have all of your attributes just roaming aimlessly about, there's a good chance that you're going to find somebody who is a double for somebody in your life. Spiritual or the ghostly doppelganger, that concept, like I said, every culture seems to have one. And we have, of course, brought up like spirits that disguise themselves as people. Like the hag can disguise themselves as a person can actually look like somebody that wasn't originally the hag but is now. Some people will believe that the hag will steal their skin, wear it, and then present themselves as it. Some people think that the hag has the ability to shapeshift into somebody that that's kind of a weird question ultimately, because it's like, if you think it's the doppelganger, that is an interesting take, because the doppelganger ideally has all the memories and has all of the thoughts of who they are assuming the identity of. And that way they would know a lot of things, and they would know what to do and what not to do in a relationship. And maybe the doppelganger is just course correcting whatever went wrong with your ex and is trying to make up for the difference. That's, that actually makes a good story. Yeah. Like if you wanted to write a story about a doppelganger who fell in love with somebody, and then when that couple broke it off, it's like, no, and then just decided to take up the mantle and undo some of the damage done.
And shove the X into the mirror.
Exactly.
But like I said, I want to hear more details.
I know. We need more information, because you can't just say, I think I'm dating my ex's doppelganger, because I'm like,
what is the series of events that have led you here?
Because I'm trying to think. I believe I think it's Irish. The Irish have a doppelganger that I think is very physical. I think it's called the fetch. The fetch. And the fetch is an identical entity that roams and comes in. But I want to say it is a physical entity, because a lot of times doppelgangers are not always physical. They're spiritual. Their image is of the person, but they don't have as much physical presence as to engage in any type of physical activity.
And they're always trying to make fetch happen.
I knew it. I was just about to say, incoming Gretchen Wiener's joke from Madison. I knew it.
And I could be wrong. Gosh. It may not be fetch.
It was right there for me.
It was so, I saw your face. You were like, I got something good to say.
Yeah, I was just setting up the joke. It's possible.
Yes.
It's possible I have the name wrong.
All right. We have. Oh, Madison, did you want to? I forgot if you answered that. You want to go for it?
Oh no, I'm good.
Okay.
I completely.
More information.
Yeah, more information.
More information,
all right.
please. Thank you.
Yeah. Shoot in that information. Our last question. This almost concludes our first live stream
cool.
podcast.
Yeah.
This is really cool. Like, we have one more question, but I'm super lit about this, because it just shows that we're advancing. Like, this is pretty cool.
Yes, thank you for bearing with us, y'all, in our technical endeavors, because this is
I'm always learning. We're always learning something new. So the last question is from Ashley Werner, and it's for you, Madison. She wants to know if you ever saw a ghost at Disney.
Absolutely. I've been waiting all my life for this. Thank you. So I'm sure many of you, being that you all like ghosts, know about the little boy who haunts the Haunted Mansion. So if you don't know that story, basically what happened, is this little boy who I want to say was like 8 years old or something of that, along the lines of that age range. And he passed away and his family got him cremated. Well, the Haunted Mansion was his favorite ride in the entire world. So his mom wanted to spread his ashes in the Haunted Mansion. You know, that's a pretty common request with Disney, where people will come and be like, can I spread my loved one's ashes here because they love Disney? Well, Disney has a strict policy of do not do that.
Yeah, please don't.
Yeah, so she asked, like, can I spread my son's ashes in the Haunted Mansion? And they're like, please do not. Well, she got on the ride and spread the ashes anyways. And so a lot of people have caught this little boy in photos, basically when he is standing on the side of the ride, and they'll like tell employees saying like, hey, there's
a kid, yeah.
There's a kid on the side of the ride and things like that. But when they go to look, nobody's there. I've seen the little boy myself. I saw it before I ever knew that was a thing. And I, was like telling my parents, I'm like, hey, there's a kid standing in the cemetery. Because the point in the ride where they take you through the cemetery and all the ghoulies are popping out of the crypts and stuff. Yeah, he was like standing amongst them. And I was like, oh my God, there's a child standing there. And I told my parents and they're like, where's the kid? And and then I was on Twitter when Twitter was still really popular, and I saw the photo pop up, and I was like, oh, wow. So I told y'all, ghosts kind of dupe me sometimes,
Sure.
Especially when I am in my logical mindset, a set of there shouldn't be a spirit there,
right.
But it's just the case. So the little boy is definitely haunting the Haunted Mansion. So there are not 999 happy hauntings anymore. There are 1,000.
And Disney is notoriously haunted.
Oh yeah,
there's many stories of not even people who just died there, but people who worked there, people who've spent a lot of their energy there, fans. Absolutely, if I could go to Disney for free, I definitely go to Disney for free. Mm-hmm. And seen on their favorite rides. So many people have had spirits and stories. And I want to say there's actually a story of Walt Disney himself haunting Disney World, just walking around at night through one of the studio buildings there. But yes, I've heard many stories that there are spirits at Disney World, and it isn't just people who died there or whose bodies are resting there or things like that. Keep in mind that the sheer energy and the sheer life of a location, how much joy, how much wonder, how much exuberance is in a location can draw spirits from near and far. So I definitely would say that Disney is probably wonderfully haunted because the ghosts are probably not angry or vengeful. They're probably being like, I'm in Disney World.
Right. And Walt's apartment on Main Street, USA, I believe people claim is haunted by Walt Disney. I think it's a residual haunting.
Yeah. The only stories I've ever heard was they see him walking.
Right.
He's just walking.
But yeah, if you didn't know that, he has an apartment that he would stay in that's right on top of, I believe it's above Casey's, which is the hot dog restaurant. But yeah, people claim to see him. So next time you go to Disney, see if you can spot a ghost. It can be a little tricky with all the people in costumes,
there's a lot of people.
But thank you guys for listening to this episode. I'm so glad that all the Disney and movie questions came up. Yeah. This has been fun. But if you did have a question that we did not answer today, like I said, go utilize that Q&A button on TikTok. That, like I said, is going to be the best way for me to see it, and we will read it and answer it on the podcast.
Or become a pair junkie.
You can just
ask it live.
Exactly. Yes, if you want to join our live streams where we're filming these episodes, because we want to film a lot of the episodes live for y'all. So if you want to be a part of that, become a pair junkie over on Patreon. But with that, thank you guys so much. And my name is Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susi.
Stay spooky, y'all.